Hi, shalom friends. I don't know if there's a human being alive who has watched birds in flight and not been impressed by their grace, by their agility, and maybe even with a touch of envy, wished for themselves to be able to soar high in the sky and to use the wind as a means of locomotion. Indeed, the Kabbalists actually liken a commandment, a mitzvah, to a bird. So when a person does a commandment, it's like a bird that's soaring upwards. And the wings of the bird are the love and the fear that every Jew puts into the mitzvah. And others have likened not only the mitzvah to a bird, but even the very essence of the soul is like a bird, because its grace and its beauty is when it soars high in the sky. And hence the famous teaching of one of the Balei Musar, who said, spirituality is like a bird. If you hold it too loosely, it will just fly away. But if you hold it too rigidly, you will imprison it. Let me tell you a fable about a bird. It's thoughtful. The story goes that there was a nightingale that had the most beautiful voice. And when it would sing, not only all of the animals of the forest would listen, but even its fellow birds would often gather to listen to the nightingale sing. One day, one of the citizens of a great king was walking and heard the voice and the song of the bird and thought how wonderful it would be if he could capture this bird and present it to the king. And so he did. He captured the bird and presented it to the king and said, Your Majesty, I brought for you a gift, a bird that sings, a bird that's beautiful, a bird that will bring you to a different world. And the king thanked the hunter and immediately ordered a beautiful cage made out of gold and appointed a royal servant, I don't know what he called him, whose job was to bathe and to bring food and to make sure that the bird, the nightingale, has everything that it needs. And the next day at 11 o'clock, the window was opened, and as the sunlight was streaming in, the nightingale began to sing. And indeed, the king heard the beauty of the voice. Well, all of the animals of the forest had missed hearing the nightingale, and certainly its fellow birds. When they heard the song, they immediately gathered, but he wasn't at the usual place. They flew to the palace, and through the open window, they saw their friend in a golden cage singing its heart out. The birds said to the nightingale, How does it go? You are so fortunate. You're in a beautiful place. Your home is made out of gold. And we notice that there's food and water in front of you. You don't have to forage. You don't have to fly. You don't have to look. And the nightingale chirped back, I would give everything to be out of this cage. It's a gold, but it's a cage. It imprisons me. And all of the food, I'd rather suffer and work for it than it being presented to me. And this went on for one day, a second day, and a third day. And the nightingale was suffering mightily. Two of its friends flew to the window and chirped, What can we do to get you out of here? We're not strong enough to break you out of the cage. The nightingale replied, I have a sister, a 3-day journey. She's older than me and much wiser. If you could find her, tell her about my predicament, perhaps she could give you some good advice. I miss her greatly, and I miss her advice. And the two bird friends flew over meadows, and it was a 3-day journey. They were quite fatigued. But as they got closer to the destination, they immediately recognized the sister because she sounded so beautiful, just like her younger brother. After the nightingale had finished her song, the two birds approach and say, we bring you Regards from your brother. However, we have news which is very distressing. What is it? How is my brother? How is he feeling? Does he still sing as beautifully as before? And they said, he sings beautifully, but he's not anymore in the forest. He now sings in a palace. It's a beautiful building, and he's behind bars of gold. And he has his own butler that takes care of him. And he's very unhappy. And when the sister heard that, she said, and what does he want from me? She said, he would like your advice. And the bird began to think, how can I get my brother out? How can I get my brother out? Oh, my brother is in prison. And suddenly she stopped talking. In fact, she lost her balance and she fell from the tree. The two birds looked in horror, thinking that perhaps some terrible harm had come to her. She did not only did she not give any advice, but now they're going to have to fly back and tell the brother of this unfortunate occurrence. They fly back. The nightingale was waiting for them. What did my sister say? And sadly, they said, we told it to your sister. She stopped singing and perhaps suffered some type of a equivalent of a heart attack. Or we saw her fall, and then we just ran away. We were just so overcome with emotion. And the bird thought, my sister, because of me, my sister. And the next day, when all of the birds gathered, the nightingale sang, but not with enthusiasm. Though the king could not tell the difference, the birds were able to tell the difference. And then a second day passed, and a third day passed, and suddenly the nightingale began not only not to sing beautifully, but stopped singing completely. And the king looks at the bird and says to the royal butler, what's with the bird? How come I don't hear any voices? Your Majesty, I don't know. It's just not feeling well. It's just not singing. Well, take care of it, will you please? For the next 2 days, they tried to solve the problem, but the bird was not cooperating. It lost its appetite, stopped eating. Well, he came back to the Majesty and says, Your Majesty, I believe the bird is dying. So His Majesty said, well, it's a royal bird. It deserves a funeral. Bury it in the garden. So sadly, he takes the cage, carries it out to the garden, digs a little hole, opens up the cage, and is about to take the bird to put into the hole when suddenly the bird flaps its wing and runs out. You see, the bird was not dead at all. It was feigning illness. It stopped eating. It stopped singing to give the impression that it died. But actually, through this facade, it was creating its own escape. And so the fable ends. If we think about it, our soul sings beautiful songs. Our soul could uplift us. But then we put it into a golden cage and we feed it potato chips. And we feed it entertainment. And we feed it silliness. And the soul pines. How can that soul grow? And the answer is to die a little bit. See, paradoxically, when a person denies himself something of the world, you actually accomplish that you appreciate what you have much more. To put it a little bit differently, a rich man might be wealthy in assets, but actually feel very poor, because he's always looking for that magic that will fulfill him, that will satisfy him, that will bring him to the next level. He has everything, and he's still not satisfied. There must be something more that he could do. Whereas the poor man, actually, if he has a meal, he's satisfied. He's not looking for more. Yesterday he was hungry, today he has breakfast, he's a happy guy. Yesterday he was cold, today he has a sweater, he's a happy person. See, paradoxically, by denying yourself a little bit of the pleasures of the world itself then offers infinite pleasures in what you actually have. So think about it. Are we the bird in the golden cage? Are we the bird outside of the cage? And if we are the bird in the golden cage, is there a way for us to at least occasionally leave it? Well, be a man, but fly like a bird. Shalom.